घर से हम निकलते हैं और इधर से औरत मार से गालियाँ हमें पड़ती हैं, इधर से हमारे वर्क प्लेस पे गालियाँ पड़ती हैं, मीडिया पे हमें गालियाँ पड़ती है, इधर गालियाँ पड़ती हैं, उधर गालियाँ पड़ती हैं कि भाई द वे यू आर बीइंग अ मैन or the way you're trying to be a man is wrong. The model of masculinity is deeply flawed and the criticism is genuine. But what's this guy supposed to do? जब उसके सामने और कोई मॉडल
ऑल्टरनेटिव
है
ही नहीं है. बिल्कुल.
हमारी कॉन्वर्सेशन जारी है विद हसन बाजवा ऑन द ओल्ड मॉडल्स ऑफ मैस्कुलिनिटी और कैसे मेल एंगेजमेंट से हम इस मॉडल को रीडिफाइन कर सकते हैं.
क्योंकि जब अगला खुद फील करेगा कि उसकी कोई एजेंसी थी in defining the framework within which he situates his masculinity, तब ही वो उसकी ओनरशिप लेगा, तब ही वो उसको डिफेंड करेगा और तब ही वो अपनी ज़िंदगी में वो अच्छी तरह और सही तरह अप्लाई करेगा. वरना तो वो मेरी बातें सुन के कहते हैं हाँ बातें तो बड़ी अच्छी की थी लेकिन मेरे घर में सिचुएशन और है, मेरे मोहल्ले में सिचुएशन और है, मेरे एथनिसिटी, मेरी रिलीजन व्हाटएवर उनमें सिचुएशन और ये इधर मेरे पे अप्लाई नहीं होता.
वेलकम टू अनदर एपिसोड ऑफ आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स.
And that's like the really like
Margaret
scary
Atwood
part.
ने यही बात की ना, I think it's very often quoted that men are afraid that women will laugh at them, but women are afraid that men will kill them.
Exactly.
You know, so the reaction, yes, the feeling of humiliation, the fear of humiliation is legitimate enough. It's a real thing that men face. लेकिन भाई the worst they face is humiliation. The consequences of preventing the possible humiliation results in women dying.
Yeah.
That is the. But just to sort of get back to something that I again experienced in this engagement with this young man. This led me back to, because what I made sure was कि even when I was disagreeing with him, I was like अच्छा चल ठीक है यार मैं नहीं agree करता, ये मेरे ख्याल से ये बड़ी एक silly बात है, but I was like अच्छा चलो ठीक है आगे बढ़ो. And I gave him 2.5 hours हमने ये live session किया और बात ख़त्म नहीं हो रही थी.
You have a lot of patience then.
हाँ, but I realized that patience is needed. Because if these young men don't feel that their words are being heard, even if they're silly words, then they are going to get more entrenched. तो वो उससे मैं बार बार, और वो सिर्फ एक दफ़ा मेरे पे तप्पा था जब मैंने हंसना शुरू कर दिया. And he was getting very very angry because
You just proved that point
I
we were
proved that
making
point.
earlier.
But I think the impact was a little bit different because I was a man who was doing it and an older man who was doing it. But still, we had, this is an important thing to acknowledge कि ये लड़कों की जो frustration affairs हैं वो genuine हैं.
बिल्कुल they are genuine.
Legitimate हो, illegitimate is actually a secondary issue. The fears are real. तो जब तक हम उनसे engage नहीं करेंगे, उनको सामने नहीं लाएंगे. Like when I was doing that live, was Sayyid Muzammil, who incidentally is a fantastic dude.
Yeah, we've had him on our podcast as well.
Yeah, I interviewed him also when he before I did the workshop. So he came on and he was like, because the guy I was talking to was anonymous Instagram handle and no picture.
Also, किस तरह बात हो?
यानी कि
Audio?
हाँ वो ऑडियो पे था मैं विद विजुअल वहाँ
ठीक है.
ठीक है ना. तो मुज़म्मिल भाई यार अगर बंदा एनोनिमस है तो फिर बात क्या कर रहे हो? इट मीन्स दैट द पर्सन इज नॉट ब्रेव इनफ टू स्टैंड बाय देयर ओपिनियंस. बट द पॉइंट इज दैट वुड हैव बीन an ineffective use of my time because then I would have shut down the conversation before it even started. तो मैंने कहा चल तुम्हारे premises पे, तुम्हारे Instagram, तुम मेरे पे ना हो, मैं तुम्हारे Instagram पे आता हूँ. Let's engage with this. And in the process of engaging with him, I realized that this young man, like so many others, is suffering क्योंकि उसके इर्द गिर्द दुनिया तब्दील हो गई. जो उसका बाप दादा जिस दुनिया में रहता है, जब एक मर्द एक आमदन पे आप घर चला सकते थे, जब मोबिलिटी की सूरत हाल और थी, जब कम्युनिकेशंस की सूरत हाल और थी, जब फाइनेंशियल सूरत हाल, इकोनॉमिक रियलिटीज़, सोशल लीगल पॉलिटिकल रियलिटीज़ और थी, उस ज़माने में मर्दों का जो मॉडल था वो आज के ज़माने पे अप्लाई करना इंतहाई मुश्किल है. तो ठीक है, और उनको क्या फील होता है कि भाई असी घर से हम निकलते हैं और इधर से औरत मार से गालियाँ हमें पड़ती हैं, इधर से हमारे वर्क प्लेस पे गालियाँ पड़ती हैं, मीडिया पे हमें गालियाँ पड़ती है, इधर गालियाँ पड़ती हैं, उधर गालियाँ पड़ती हैं कि भाई द वे यू आर बीइंग अ मैन or the way you're trying to be a man is wrong. It's bad, it's evil, all of these things. Now, the model of masculinity is deeply flawed and the criticism is genuine. But what's this guy supposed to do? जब उसके सामने और कोई मॉडल
ऑल्टरनेटिव ही नहीं है, बिल्कुल
वो क्या ऑल्टरनेटिव अपना सकता है? जो भी ऑल्टरनेटिव वो कहीं पे उठाता है, अपनाता है, उसको पता है कि यार आई हैव अ प्राइस दैट आई एम गोना हैव टू पे फॉर दिस. इफ माय सिस्टर इज स्टडीइंग, पीपल आर गोइंग टू से, मोहल्ले के लड़कों ने, लोगों ने मुझे बोलना है कि तुम्हें डर नहीं है कि तुम्हारी बहन इधर उधर हो जाएगी? मेरी बेटियां अगर अपनी मर्जी से शादी करेंगी तो सुनना पड़ेगा मुझे कि यार ये
even the concept of even the name, it's like honor killing, you know, let's just like unpack the honor in the killing. क्योंकि I was at this workshop a very long time ago, उन्होंने बड़ी मज़े की एक analogy इस्तेमाल की थी कि it's like मर्द अपनी सारी इज्जत, अपने घर की इज्जत, अपने माशरे की इज्जत डाल देता है औरत पे, और उसने घर बैठ के उस इज्जत को प्रोटेक्ट करना है, एंड फिर ही इज फ्री टू रोम अराउंड एंड डू व्हाट.
और बाहर वो रोम अराउंड करके बेगैरतियां भी करता रहे, कोई मसला नहीं. क्यों? क्योंकि इज्जत घर पे महफूज है, तो वो बाहर जो मर्जी करे.
घर नहीं लेके आता,
घर नहीं लेके आता, लेकिन वो बाहर वो कैट कॉल भी करेगा, हरास भी करेगा, ये भी करेगा, वो करेगा, लेकिन उसकी इज्जत
बट उसकी ऑन द फ्लिप साइड उसकी ट्रेजेडी ये है कि आपने उस बंदे को उसकी इज्जत का इतना उसको वो करवा दिया है कि वो ही हैज killed his own child. Like आपने उसकी इंसानियत ख़त्म कर दी है उसके अंदर से. You have taken away his ability to love. I'm reading this book by Bell Hooks. I'm sure like you know about her as well. Like अगर किसी ने नहीं पढ़ी, please, it's called The Will to Change. And उसने बहुत खूबसूरती से यही सारी बातें की हैं कि men, engagement, masculinity, patriarchy, और वो उसमें यही बात करी है कि हमने बड़ा एक डिसर्विस किया मर्दों को. हमने उनको सिखाया नहीं कि उन्होंने मोहब्बत कैसे करनी है, उन्होंने प्यार कैसे करनी है. और हम ख़वातीन ये तक नहीं बात करते कि हम जिससे डरते हैं उससे मोहब्बत भी करते हैं, और ये सच है, ठीक है ना. A lot of women love their fathers, but their fathers are also patriarchs that take away their freedom. अब ये चीज़ें साथ साथ चल रही होती हैं, आप उसको आइसोलेट नहीं कर सकते. बहुत औरतें अपने मियाँ से या अपने पार्टनर से मोहब्बत भी करती हैं, but there's also some violence there at times. There's also some sexual violence there at times. So how, because हमने मर्दों को प्यार करना सिखाया ही नहीं है, और हम वो बात ही नहीं कर रहे. And then one thing she said in the book that really stuck with me, and I feel like I would like more women to reflect on this, कि हमने मर्द को कहा है कि अगर तुम ये चीज़ करोगे तो तुम्हें प्यार मिलेगा, अगर तुम ये चीज़ करोगे तो तुम्हारी वैल्यू है. which is the reason why so many of my male friends are so टॉक्सिक प्रोडक्टिविटी के, वो कैपिटलिस्ट कल्चर के मारे हुए हैं. अगर वो कमाएंगे नहीं, अगर वो सक्सेसफुल नहीं होंगे तो उनकी कोई वैल्यू नहीं है. और हम भी ये करते हैं. इवन द मोर प्रोग्रेसिव वुमेन डू से दैट कि लाइक द आइडिया ऑफ वर्किंग बीइंग इन अ रिलेशनशिप विद समवन हु इज लेस सक्सेसफुल, लाइक इफ यू आर अ पावरफुल सक्सेसफुल वुमन, you need someone equally successful. And yes, a lot of the reason for that is that a lot of men do get insecure. A lot of men, but the reason why they get insecure is because we have told them your value will only come from what you can give me. Your value will not come from the fact that you just have value as a human being.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think that's been a very important part in my own journey. My wife, when we got married, I'm 5 years older than her, and we got married when I was 27. She was 22, so she was quite young, you know, hadn't really started on life. At that point, she had not really had any academic success or anything. And I was doing pretty damn well. So I was living up to that expectation कि main कमाई मेरी होगी, मैं ही protect करूँगा. I was living up to that requirement. But then we moved to Denmark, and things actually flipped around. So the consequence of that has been that my wife is now very successful. She's doing a PhD in structural biology, which is bloody hard.
Wow,
and she's doing very well. She's in one of the best universities in the world. Usse pehle, by the way, she also had, again, after we got married, she finally did her A-levels. She had some issues why she wasn't able to do even her A-levels. And she did that, and she topped the world. World distinction. She topped the world. अखबार में उसकी तस्वीर आई थी, कहते मैं नहीं जा रही अपना अवार्ड लेने, I'm 22. So she did fantastically with that. She did fantastically in her bachelor, and she did fantastically in her master's, and now she's doing her PhD at a very prestigious place. This has been a blessing for me, because for the past 7 years since my daughter was born, I have had the privilege of being an engaged and involved father in a way that very, very few men get to be. मेरी वैल्यू मेरे घर में is not as the provider. Obviously, I work also, and I bring in a certain income which is required because life,
Exactly.
you know. But I'm also one of the, at the very least, an equal caregiver to my children. During the Corona lockdowns, I was definitely the primary caregiver. I am part of giving space to my wife so that she doesn't have to think about home cleaning and cooking, and we share that on an equal level. But it has also given me the space to realize that my value is beyond that of a provider and a protector. I will always seek to fulfill those roles, not because I'm a man, but because I love my wife and I want to be a support. I want us to be able to support each other. But this area of my life where I have felt the freedom to love, to be emotional, to give my children actual care, not as a disciplinarian, but as the person they come to when they fall and they hit themselves. Or my oldest daughter has an easier time speaking to me than she does with her mother, at least about certain things, because we have a certain हमारा जहन और तरीका जो है ना,
oldest daughter and father, like
it's a very
it's
normal.
always like
I
it's
realize
a
it's
special,
very. Yeah, she looks just like my
relationship.
me. My younger one, she looks like a ditto copy of her mother.
That's always मेरे साथ भी यही है. Like I look exactly like my dad. My brother looks exactly like my mom.
So I think it's a pretty normal thing. But this has been quite a privilege. और मुझे दिल में जो मैंने गम भी, लेकिन खुशियाँ जो मैंने महसूस की हैं, were not some that I had anticipated as a young man that I would feel. That they would give meaning to my life and they would add value to my life and be a way in which I could add value to others. So मैं तो समझता हूँ कि ये हमारे माशरे में मर्दों के साथ बहुत ज़्यादा जुल्म है. The fact that they are not taught or allowed to open up and expand the emotional sides of themselves. You have loving fathers that are loving within the four walls of the home. Like outside, they have to maintain that image of a patriarch, of a disciplinarian. I have a friend of mine. He's a politician in Haripur. And he had a daughter, and they were out in the village in the Halka, and he plays with his daughter. And even I just met him here, and he came out with his son. वो भी एक छोटा सा baby ला के या देखो मेरा बेटा. So clearly, here's a man who has an emotional connection to his children. But he told me about how one day some people from his district, उसके हल्के से वो लोग आए थे और उन्होंने बात करनी थी, तो वो बच्ची हाथ में थी, तो वो बाहर जा रहा था, तो उसकी माँ ने जाके उसको पकड़ा, खबरदार खबरदार, क्योंकि तुम्हारे हल्के के मर्दों ने तुम्हें बच्चा उठाते हुए देख लिया, तो समझ लो कि तुम्हारी वोट बैंक जो है ना वो हाफ हो जाएगी, क्योंकि वो वहाँ पे ही तुम्हारी मर्दांगी जो है वो क्वेश्चन में आ जाएगी.
बिल्कुल.
इतना बड़ा जुल्म.
रन मुरीद किसी को कहना गाली है ना.
Exactly. I'm glad you brought it up because when I was listening to you, your choice of words, मैं उस पे focus कर रही थी. You said कि I was privileged enough to take care of my daughter. You said I love my wife. You said when you were talking about her, you had this gleam in your eyes. I have never, बहुत कम ही ऐसा होगा कि मैं देखूंगी, because if it were someone talking about perhaps his girlfriend or sister, even बहनों के बारे में, mother or wife even, they would be met with so much के ridicule in the sense कि मजाक उड़ाना शुरू कर देंगे.
You're whipped.
हाँ, मतलब or even the person, the guy himself would be like, I don't think I'm comfortable talking about my sister in that, or celebrate her wins. क्यों नहीं? Talk about your sister, celebrate her wins, और show that. मतलब उसी तरीके से तो फिर कुछ cultivate होगा change.
वो तो है ना. I think part of it is this compulsion कि अपने ख़ानदान की ख़वातीन को बापर्दा रखना, by not mentioning their existence even. Right? So there is that part, but there is absolutely also this other thing about being open about it. And it's actually one of the things that I very much want to show to young men. Ki yaar, there is this dissonance in the way I come across. क्योंकि मेरा लहजा, मेरी look, मेरी background, मैं जिस तरीके से बात करता हूँ is very much, and I hate to use the term, but it's for lack of a better one, is very alpha male. यानी कि I fulfill all the criteria of being an alpha male. I've had leadership positions most of my life. I am definitely a person who can stand up in front of a huge crowd and speak without any fear. Then I'm a Bajwa, which these days, like it or not, apparently seems to matter. So there are a bunch of different things that play in. But the fact that I use this position as the so-called alpha male to speak about the exact opposite, that is, I feel, is allowing men to realize that, yaar, okay, it's actually possible, right? And the way मैं जो कहता हूँ कि यार, expressing your love is a sign of strength, not weakness. Expressing the fact that you are vulnerable and you're willing to accept your own mistakes, you're willing to accept your vulnerabilities, you are willing to be honest about the challenges you have in life. This is a source of strength, not of weakness.
And I feel like इस बारे में like we have to bring in capitalism here to talk about it further, because you know वही model है ना कि औरतें घर रहेंगी, they will have time with their children, they will nurture, they will love, they will build a family, and the man will have to sacrifice all of that so he can stay out of the house and earn a living. Even things like, you know, how maternity leave is a thing but paternity leave is not, and लोगों को लगता है कि यार हम this is a very feminist or this is a very women centric thing to ask for paternity leave, but I think it's cruel कि एक मर्द की औलाद हुई है और उसको अगले दिन ऑफिस जाना है.
Achha, so when you see this, the paternity leave is something that recently, last year or the year before, was passed into law in Denmark. And it was a very controversial thing because it was spearheaded by men's rights groups or organizations working with men. They're saying that there is, by law, there are 52 weeks after a child's birth that are given over to maternity or paternity leave. You can actually split. You can split. There's a certain number of weeks that are dedicated to the father. He gets 2 weeks, and I think there are 8 weeks that a mother gets. That's definite. वो उसको नहीं आप हिला सकते. और फिर पहले ये बात होती थी कि आप बाकी जो weeks हैं वो आप split कर लो जैसे आपकी मर्जी है. The consequence was that it was still women taking majority of the time, and it was men who were like, yeah, this is not fair, because men are not allowed, they are not being put into this position of having to take the time out to spend 6 months out of the year of leave, of parental leave, to spend that time with their children. So this is a very, I think, has been a very important thing, क्योंकि इसके और भी बहुत से नताइज होते हैं. मसलन जो जेंडर पे गैप है उसका एक बहुत बड़ा हिस्सा ये है कि औरतें जो हैं वो बच्चों के लिए वो 2, 3, 4, 5 साल जो है ना वो जॉब मार्केट से निकल जाती हैं और फिर वो अपनी एज पे उनकी इनकम कम होती है because they haven't been at work long enough, they haven't been promoted as quickly.
And it's how funny that women are being penalized for basically making sure that human existence remains.
Absolutely. I
mean, you're getting penalized for it.
तो उनको पैसे मिलने चाहिए ना. And that actually brings me to the other thing. Some organization in the States did a calculation a few years ago that the monetary value of the free labor conducted by women worldwide amounts to about $1 trillion a year. $1 trillion worth of labor is conducted in homes and in the informal sector, for which women receive no money. Now, I think this is part of the capitalist model and why there is so much focus on the nuclear family. क्योंकि जब आप मर्द को कहते हैं कि प्रोवाइडर तुम नहीं बनना है, तो इसका मतलब है बीवी घर पे रहती है और बीवी जो सारा अनपेड लेबर है बच्चों की देखभाल, so that you don't have to give free child care, या बच्चों की schooling और उनका pick drop, so you don't have to give free after school care. There are so many things that would wind up costing money if women weren't doing it for free at home. So actually you have a capitalist system and corporations and employers benefiting from the free labor of women without having to admit that that's what they're doing.
And the sacrifice of men of not having to spend any time with their families. So हाँ, आप मर्द और औरत दोनों victimize हो रहे हैं.
ये बात हमने अपनी जो workshops now, the engagements that I've had with young men, this is one thing I brought up. I was like, the system within which you are trying to survive is geared to exploit you. Exactly. It's designed to exploit you, to exploit your time, to exploit your life. Now, if you want to deal with this, then deal with it. There are many ways in which we can engage with these structures of inequality, systems of inequality. But do not direct your rage towards the other half of the people that are supposed to help you with this, because they are being exploited, you are being exploited, and instead of turning your aim at the structures and the people and the corporations and the systems that are exploiting you, those people in those positions are able to actually turn your rage against each other. Now, if you, for instance, in America, you have the Republican Party is the pro-business party. They're also the family values party. अभी अलग बात है कि उनकी family values बोलते तो हैं, पीछे उनके पता नहीं क्या कुछ होता है, but they are very much a pro-family party. And they are very much, women should stay at home, you need to have this close relationship in your home, you have to do this and this and this and this. And what I think is that they also realize that as long as they keep women out of the job market, keep the men hungry because they have to earn. They are willing to endure any deprivation in order to bring home that paycheck.
Yeah.
And they are at the same time, nobody has to pay for all the care work that women are doing at home because family values.
Also about the maternal and paternal leave, I was reminded of this thing that, of course, a woman, maternal leave ka concept ye bhi hota hai ki it's not just the arrival of the child itself, but also the woman experiencing physiological and psychological changes, okay, body ho, mental ho. It's also the men who experience the psychological changes. I forgot this very term. They associate that after the arrival of a child, the father itself experience. I completely forgot the term. So us cheez ko bhi madde nazar rakhte hue, this whole conversation we just had is relevant, and why a lot of states needs to consider this aspect.
I think fathers should be allowed to be fathers. And right now they're not allowed to be fathers. They are expected to be providers. And provider and father are two different roles.
Because I think we're moving towards like the tail end of our conversation, but I do want to talk about the workshops that you've been doing here, the work you've been doing here. So please walk us through the कि आपने थोड़ा बता भी दें हमारे audiences को कि आप specifically क्या कर रहे थे यहाँ पर, what have been your findings, and क्या कुछ interesting चीजें थी that we would like to know here.
Absolutely, and I am thrilled to tell you about it because it was a wonderful experience. Basically, this workshop is titled Men as Allies of Equality. The purpose of this was with the understanding that the current models of masculinity or the models of masculinity जो कि हमारे बाप दादे apply करते हैं अपनी ज़िंदगी पे, वो आज के दौर में नहीं चलते. They are not suitable for the realities of today. But nobody has provided a model for anyone to follow. But I also, even as a father, I'm 42, I'm technically in that age range, the chachu category, who should be in a position to tell these young men how to be men. But that's missing the point. It has to be a co-creative process, क्योंकि जब अगला खुद feel करेगा कि उसकी कोई agency थी in defining the framework within which he situates his masculinity, तब ही वो उसकी ownership लेगा. तभी वो उसको डिफेंड करेगा और तब ही वो अपनी ज़िंदगी में वो अच्छी तरह और सही तरह अप्लाई करेगा. वरना तो वो मेरी बातें सुन के कहते हैं हाँ बातें तो बड़ी अच्छी की थी लेकिन मेरे घर में सिचुएशन और है, मेरे मोहल्ले में सिचुएशन और है, मेरे एथनिसिटी, मेरी रिलीजन व्हाटएवर उनमें सिचुएशन और ये इधर मेरे पे अप्लाई नहीं होता. सो इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू engage them in it. So basically our workshops are structured in the first stage, which is inform. Allow men to go through a process. We do some exercises with them. We do some exercises in empathy with them. ताकि जो realities हैं, gender-based violence, gender discrimination, इनकी जो realities हैं, वो सिर्फ paper पे statistics ना रहें, बल्कि वो खुद ज़रा अपने आप को इसमें empathize करें, and they start realizing कि अच्छा, actually stepping outside of the home has this impact. There was one wonderful example, a young man, they were shown an illustration, an illustration of a young girl looking at a market where there were only men, and piche Minare Pakistan. Now, sorry, it was a park, but populated only by men, and this girl is looking at it, and the interpretation one of the young men came with was कि Pakistan बना सबके लिए, लेकिन आज का पाकिस्तान सिर्फ मर्दों के लिए. Now, for a young man from Punjab University to come and show that level of empathy and understanding कि हाँ यार, this must be deeply, deeply frustrating for the women. So the first stage is to engage with them on that empathic level ताकि उनको ज़रा macro situation का ज़रा बेहतर एहसास होए कि what are the structures that are directly harming or discriminating for women, the women in their lives. यानी कि हम बार बार कहते हैं कि भाई याद रखो ये तुम्हारी माँ, तुम्हारी बहन, तुम्हारी बीवी, तुम्हारी बेटी की बात हो रही है यहाँ पे. Then the next stage, what we did was we said, now imagine कि तुम मर गए हो और तुम्हारे जनाजे पे sit back and reflect over not what people are going to say about you when they remember you. Think about what you would want them to say. And then we put this up and say कि the जो मर्दों के रोल्स हमने ऑलरेडी डिफाइन किए हैं कि मर्द का रोल है एज अ फादर, मर्द का रोल है एज अ ब्रदर, एज अ सन, एज अ हस्बैंड, एज अ मैन, एज अ पाकिस्तानी. सो जस्ट गिविंग देम सम कैटेगरीज के इस लिहाज से, मर्दाना रोल्स के लिहाज से लोग तुम्हारे बारे में क्या बोलेंगे. दिस प्रोसेस इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज इट अलाउज देम टू बी मच मोर फ्री. मैं तो अच्छा इस सिनारियो में तो मैं मर चुका हूँ मैं मर चुका हूँ और अब मैं सोच सकता हूँ कि what is it that I want to be remembered for. And it was such a wonderful experience because these young men, and it was a very diverse group, यानी कि 9 डिस्ट्रिक्ट से 8 डिस्ट्रिक्ट से 14 लड़के थे, 8 मुख्तलिफ डिस्ट्रिक्ट से थे, इंक्लूडिंग गिलगित एंड साउथ वज़ीरिस्तान. साउथ वज़ीरिस्तान से जो बंदा आया था, I was genuinely impressed by him that he's somebody who has really shaken free of some of these structures. But what I had expected was that they would also, just like me and like how we've been speaking here, see the roles of men, and they would define, I want to be remembered as a good provider. I want to be remembered as a protector. I want to be remembered as a man who performed, who achieved great things. But what I saw was that they were using language like, I want to be a supportive husband. I want to be a brother who is a friend. I want to be a father who is loving, who is showing care towards his children. So already wahan pe my heart was so full of honestly pride and joy कि यार I'm blessed to see this young group of men who are able to, on their own, I primed them a little bit to have these conversations, but on their own they had come to this point saying and identifying softness, compassion, kindness as some of the attributes they wanted to have applied to their person and and their masculinity.
Yeah, and that just goes to show, right, कि this need for this softness सब मर्दों के अंदर है, लेकिन जो structures हमने इस वक्त बनाए हुए हैं वो उनको वो allow नहीं करता to have that softness, and that's such a tragic thing.
Exactly ही बात हुई थी, and one young man saying कि भाई देखें हमारा family system हो रहा है. So I'm like, yeah, I mean, I have to acknowledge that this is the reality. But this was not so much about कि आप कर सकते हो नहीं कर सकते हो. अभी तो हम establish कर रहे हैं कि आप किस तरह के मर्द बनना चाहते हो. अब वो मुमकिन है नहीं मुमकिन, आपकी जो इंडिविजुअल सर्कमस्टांसेस हैं, जारी बात है वो मैं तो नहीं आपको इम्पोज कर सकता कि आपने बनना ही ऐसे है. There are going to be expectations in your society, in your family and everything that you will have to live up to, and you don't have a choice in that matter. But isn't it wonderful to know that you have articulated that this is the kind of man you want to be? So that was that co-creative process was a wonderful thing. And then, and this I remember from myself also, is that when you get to that point and you are able to reframe your masculinity, फिर guilt, एक accountability, internal accountability शुरू हो जाती है. Because I'm ashamed to admit it, but obviously I'm a product of this society. तो मैंने भी जिसे कहते हैं ना बड़ी stupid हरकतें की हैं when I was young. You know, I was a cocky, so-called alpha male type of boy. You know, zooming around on motorcycles, being a nuisance, and even though I got along wonderfully with women, I had very near and dear, platonic, genuine relationships with women, but there were just some things that slipped through the net, but I still had to take accountability for it. And one of the ways in which I've remedied that in my own heart is by doing what I do. So you go through this inform phase, you go through this co-creation phase, and then you go through an action phase. कि अच्छा अब तुम क्या कर सकते हो? ये नहीं है कि आपने पूरे माशरे को आपने आज में ही आपने तब्दील करना नहीं होगा, लेकिन आपके हाथ में क्या है जो कि आप अभी इस वक्त कमिट कर सकते हो, आप प्लेज कर सकते हो, जिससे आपके माशरे की, आपके ख़ानदान की ख़वातीन की ज़िंदगी बेहतर होगी. एंड नाउ दिस वेरीड फ्रॉम द बिग स्ट्रक्चर, लाइक द गाय फ्रॉम साउथ वज़ीरिस्तान कहते हैं कि मैं तो ये वाले प्रोग्राम जो हैं मैं अपने गांव में करना चाह रहा हूँ, टू द गाय हु सेड कि मुझे अब वैसे एहसास हो गया है तो मैं घर पे जो है ना अपनी माँ और अपनी बहन की मदद मैं क्या करूँगा.
यही बहुत बड़ी बात
एहसास
होती है.
सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट
Yeah.
चीज़
The
है.
important thing
एम्पथाइज
was- yeah.
करना, ये कंपैशन शो करना, इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. योर वर्कशॉप्स आर द वे टू डू दैट. यू नो हाउ ये कोलैबोरेटिव एफर्ट होगी. उन्होंने कहा नहीं मैं पास ऑन करूँगा. इट्स लाइक अ चेन. और फिर इसी तरह वी कैन चेंज द फेस ऑफ सोसाइटी.
No, and Hassan, like अब इतनी दफ़ा हम बात तो कह देते हैं कि वो patriarchy is harming all of us, but I feel like this conversation with you and what you like really puts that in perspective for not just जो लोग देख रहे हैं but for us as well, because of course हमारा भी ये एक blind spot है because मैं मर्द नहीं हूँ ना. जिस तरह हम औरतों को कहते हैं कि मर्दों को कहते हैं कि you really can't understand because of औरत नहीं हो, इसी तरह हम भी नहीं समझ पाते क्योंकि हम मर्द नहीं हैं. बट वही बात है, we need to talk to people to understand ताकि हम holistically मिल के ये conversations कर सकें, because वही बात है ना कि हम सब trapped हैं, हम सब दुख में हैं.
It's something that affects all of us. And यही बात है कि आई एम वेरी, मुझे लोग कहते हैं ना, सवाल करते हैं चैलेंजर्स खास तौर पर, तो फिर बताओ औरत क्या करे. मैंने कहा मैनू की पता यार, मैं औरत थोड़ी हाँ. मैं आपको बता सकता हूँ और आपसे इंगेज कर सकता हूँ कि मैं मर्द होते हुए मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ और मुझे क्या करना चाहिए. लेकिन आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू डिफाइन फेमिनिटी, बट द अदर साइड ऑफ दैट इज that women are not going to define masculinity for me. Generally, nobody's going to define my masculinity for me. That I have taken ownership of my masculinity. But it's very important that these young men, they don't realize when they get in contact, come in contact with the feminist movement and the feminist narrative, they're like, these are women telling us how to be men. Actually, all you're saying is how you're just telling them, don't be men like this. That's what you're saying. That's what feminists are saying.
But like, and having said that, you know, like a proud feminist over here. But having said that, I do think, you know, because जो मैं आपको bell hooks का बताई थी, she's also like a very well-known feminist. But she herself said कि I feel कि ये conversations feminist circles में भी होने की ज़रूरत है. And like, what are feminists doing in amplifying these conversations? Because at the end of the day, it is gender equality, right? It is the fight against patriarchy. I am the daughter of someone who has fought patriarchy like all his life, and I think unse mujhe itni cheez, because he kept telling me never be a cynic. Like there's a place for anger, and then there's a place to go beyond it, and things happen when you let go of that anger. And I think that is, मैं काफ़ी दफ़ा इस spaces में कहती हूँ, while I understand why you're angry, you know, I understand why women are angry, and I feel like वो anger को channel करना बहुत ज़रूरी है, but it needs to be channeled, like, you know, it needs to be turned into something productive. And then media goal हमेशा ये होता है कि मैंने अपने आप को resolve करना है. मेरा goal होता है कि मैंने अपने आप को heal करना है ताकि मैं trigger ना हो सकूँ. Like, because once you cannot be triggered, then you can do amazing things.
I mean, I'm telling you, this is one of the things that drives a lot of these young boys nuts about me, is that they say, "Yaar, tu to aurat hai," and I'm like, whatever, buddy. You know, like because it genuinely, it does not affect me at all. In fact, ulta मैं कहता हूँ, why do you say that, man?
Yeah.
Like, what is it?
They, like the video that we put up, that's the problem, right? Because I'm not getting triggered. Like you're just smiling along and you're laughing along. Like, don't give them that space.
I think you have been a part of this spiritual journey जहाँ पे you have passed that stage where you get angry और उससे आप बहुत आगे चले गए. हर एक का एक different life में होता है कि okay, they're at that stage.
And we need to have sympathy for empathy for anyone who is in that other valley stage. But the goal is to not be stuck there. The goal is to get out of that space, to evolve.
I actually just need to say something here, because I think it's important for the young men who are watching this. I know I come across as quite well put together and doing well in my life, and it's true, my sense of masculinity is not dependent on others. But just like any other human beings, I have deep insecurities about other things in my life. I have various forms of trauma that I've been processing. I have a ton of things that are in turmoil within myself, including things where I feel I am monstrously inadequate. But that's a part of the human condition, कि हर इंसान के दिल में ये बात होती है. और मेरे लिए ये मेरा दिल हल्का होता है जब मैं खुला लोगों को एडमिट कर देता हूँ कि यार मैं आई एम नॉट ओके मैन, या मेरे ये मसले हैं, मेरे वो मसले हैं. आई एम वेरी लकी दैट द फ्रेंड्स दैट आई हैव, आई जस्ट for the first time in a very long time, I was hanging out with my buddies, my college crew last weekend, And the wonderful thing is that I realized that this is a group of people with which I have a loving relationship. Like, it's a relationship, not one, especially us boys amongst ourselves. हाँ, जोगतबाजी तो लॉरी है, तो जोगतबाजी वगैरह तो गुजारा ही नहीं होता. That's our love language. जोगतबाजी बड़ी चलती है, मजाक बड़ा उड़ाते हैं, लेकिन जो लव और केयर की जो फीलिंग मुझे मिलती है, I have revealed things about myself to this group that are humiliating and they're devastating to me as an individual, but I have faith कि यार इस ग्रुप में मैं अपने जिगरों को जो मर्जी बता दूँ.
They're your safe space.
They're my safe space. Imagine that there are boys who don't feel that they have a safe space because उनका internally अपने यारों दोस्तों में जो relationships हैं, they are competitive, they are hierarchical, and that is really so. And what I just want to say to viewers is, remember that even if you feel and you get beyond that point of having a fragile masculinity where you become comfortable with who you are as a man, does not mean that you have resolved all of the internal turmoil that you have in your life. Internal turmoil is a part of the human condition. We deal with our trauma, we deal with our childhoods, we deal with our experiences in many different ways, and many of those can be hurtful, and it can be a hurt that lasts for the rest of your life. But that is not what determines whether you're a man or not. What determines whether you're a man or not, in my opinion, is that you are brave enough to be the man you want to be, not what the man other people tell you have to be.
That is such a beautiful note to end this conversation on. Sarosh, do you, like, I'll finish, I have some ending thoughts, but do you want to say something?
I think it has been summed up pretty well. I'm glad you talked about emotions. I feel like it's very important to have this conversation with young men especially. I don't just mean young boys. It's so important for them to feel like they can open up, they can express, they can even talk to literally people at home. Okay, this is how I feel. I feel like crying today. I feel like, okay, even if there's anger, it is coming from a place of concern. So I feel like emotional wo aspect bahut zaruri. I'm glad you generated that.
Loving relationships, women experience community and loving relationships. This is a benefit of being a woman in this part. Men don't. So that's also why I make it a point to a lot of the content, especially the long form content that I make, I always end with, remember, I love you all. It is
oftentimes ये होता है कि men who say कि oh don't be so sensitive, or that's a cry for help basically. कि I wish I could do the same. I wish I could just explode right now, just speak my heart out.
So on that loving note, go hug your parents, go hug your partner, go hug your friends, and just know कि ये जो journey हमारी मिलके है. And I am so impressed by the work you're doing. I mean, I know कि हम लोग को 5-6 साल पहले हमने एक online meeting की थी. It's so lovely to see the fact that we're in a same room together and making content together. And please let us know the next time you're here. We would love to know any way we can get involved with the work you're doing. It's amazing work, and thank you so much. And everyone who's watching, I hope you learned and grew from this conversation. And again, yes, we love you.
It is an important thing. It's really genuinely, for me, it's a very important thing to say.
अगर आपको ये एपिसोड पसंद आई है तो लाइक करें और अपने दोस्तों के साथ शेयर करें, कमेंट्स में अपनी थॉट्स बताएं और माटी टीवी को सब्सक्राइब करें.